Hello, my name is Kendall Grady, and welcome to Holistic Music Pedagogy, where I've been discussing my holistic approach to violin playing and teaching, which I copyrighted some time ago. So today I want to talk to you about musicality, practicing musicality, teaching musicality, which can feel like a very invasive thing sometimes, a very top-down approach, and also overwhelming element because there's so much to musicality that it often feels like it's indescribable or it's unattainable, as if you have to have some sort of genius talent in order to do it successfully. One of the ways I like to practice musicality is through the habits of excellence. So the habits of excellence are something Mr. Gerald Klickstein writes in his book, A Musician's Way, and they are ease, expressiveness, accuracy, rhythmic vitality. So where is the rhythm going? Why would you put triplets as opposed to 16th notes or 8th notes? Tone quality, your attention or your focus, and your attitude, right? Your emotions, your thoughts, which I've tried to describe in earlier videos. So I might work on the same passage after having practiced the challenging elements that are technically hard, and I might add in, each time I practice one of those elements, I might add in ease, I might add in expressiveness, etc. Another way that I like to explore musicality is by trying to play it in a different style that another musician might do. So for example, this is the Torque violin concerto called Sky, which was written for Tessa Lark. And the piece is based off of Appalachian folk music. And when Tessa plays it, she adds in some slides, and she's a very bright tone that almost feels like an Irish fiddle. So I might practice it in her way first. Something very special is a slide she adds here. But I might try it in a different, more romantic way, especially when the cellos come in later on. They have a very warm and luscious sound, so I might try things in a different position or with different type of vibrato. It takes on an entirely different meaning. So the goal here is to be as flexible as possible, I think, in terms of musicality and ways that you can play a piece, and then you can narrow it down to be as true as you want to the composer's intentions or to the style of the time or the style that the piece is written. Now, in my previous two videos, I've talked about my memorization process a bit, and I've talked about my learning process a bit. There's also a performance process that I go to, and this is after I've learned the notes, I've learned the rhythm, I feel comfortable with the piece, I've played it a few times perhaps with piano. And some of those things that I do to get ready for performance actually help with my musicality. One of the things that I used to do in a piece by Brahms is envisioning the audience. And what I mean by this is perhaps, yes, envisioning performing for an audience and what it might feel like to be so exposed and vulnerable and to play for, very important people. But also perhaps envisioning an audience that's very intimate and how that feels different, and perhaps you're playing for a loved one or playing for a friend. Another thing that I do, which really helps with my musicality, is recording. There's a lot of discussion in the world about how important or lack thereof recording is. And what I find is that I may think I'm uh, presenting something technically or musically and it's coming across, but actually it's really not, because it's such in my private sphere. It's not coming across to that audience level. So recording myself and hearing, is that how I want it to sound? Is that the tone quality that I want? Is what I'm trying to do coming across to the audience? That's incredibly helpful for me, because then I can do more or do less. And I find that I don't need to be so scared of my sound so much, because the instrument and what I'm doing is so close to the body and so close to the ear that when you are projecting more, it can be quite scary at first because you think it's too much, but actually that's what needs to happen in order to bridge that barrier to the audience. I might also try to practice within the elements that I may be performing in. Something that can take a lot of people aback is how tall the stage is. So I've heard many musicians, and I've tried myself, they might practice doing it safely on a stool to get that effect of the audience actually being below you. And how do you carry your sound to them? Also, if you know that the hall is going to be very warm or very cold and dry, you might practice in those elements. And a final thing that I found very helpful was, oftentimes in performance, our body is in a very unique state. And so it may often feel like we're breathing a little heavily, or our heart is racing a little quicker, but we're not used to practicing that way, because practicing feels very comfortable and very normal to us, and we do it all the time, every day, by ourselves. So a way of practicing that is perhaps running up and down the stairs right before you go to play your piece, or standing on your head to get kind of your blood flowing towards your heart before you go and try to present your piece. So those are ways that you can practice performance elements. One of the things I do want to talk about is this idea of focus and the tone quality. Something that's helped me quite a bit is this idea of red light focus. So the idea that your brain is on, the recorder is on, it's time to go. And it mimics this sensation of everything being very important and very present that you get in a performance-like aspect. And when you're listening, when you're focused like that, there's things that have to happen simultaneously. You play a note, right? It could be just one note. You're listening to what you just did. You're having to focus on the present moment and adjust it if need be. And you're also having to imagine the note ahead of you that you're about to sound. So, and having those three elements in one split second at first seems like quite a lot to think about, but actually what it does is trains your mind to really be aware of what you're hearing and in what direction you want to move. So what's helped me the most, especially performing with an orchestra or playing a concerto, is listening to the musical line. So it's not just that each note is accurate or each note sounds pretty. It's that each note is going somewhere, is coming from someplace and going to someplace. And you'll find, if that happens, that the musical part of you comes out that is leading the mind, and it's leading the body, and things come more organically and more, I almost feel like more genuinely, rather than having to force this type of technique at this time, or this type of musical element at this time. Finally, a teacher, Mr. Flavin, talked to me a lot about this idea called hovering, because when all of these things are going on inside you, it can feel, again, quite overwhelming and quite a lot to think about. So instead, this idea of hovering over yourself, where you're aware of what you're doing, but you're also aware of the way that you're being perceived to the audience, really kind of helps bridge the gap between what's going on inside and following the musical line to what the audience are hearing and what you're trying to convey if it's coming across. It takes quite some time to explore, and I think it's something that you probably will always continue to explore, but it's a very interesting concept, and I'd like to try to play a little bit now, just by listening to the line and hovering simultaneously. See if you can pick it up. All of a sudden, I feel very free, I feel very in control, and it feels very genuine and almost out of my, separate from myself, and no longer a personal attack if I mess up or anything like that. It becomes something so outside of myself that it has its own life and its own vitality.